Hey everybody, welcome back. We're leaving the terrible time of the Civil War behind us and we talk about the main part of the Arma 3 campaign, the East Wind. Because of the length of the campaign, I made 3 videos about the East Wind, divided in Survive, Adapt and Win. This is how the campaign was split up in the first days of Arma 3. The East Wind. Survive. After a 5-year-long deployment coming to an end, the US-led peacekeepers of Task Force Aegis are preparing to depart from the Republic of Island of Stratis. The majority of the Task Force combat units have already left the island weeks earlier, while less than a company worth of engineers and support personnel remain behind to decommission the last of the NATO facilities on the Island of Stratis. However, tensions are also on the rise, as a year of miscommunications and repeated conflicts of interest between the AAF and the peacekeepers have caused both sides to increasingly mistrust one another. In the East Wind campaign, you play as Corporal Ben Carey. I already told you about him in the characters episode. Corporal Carey is one of the non-combat troops left on the island, and we begin his story on the morning of July 7th, 2035, when Carey is picked up by a helicopter on LG Connor. He is joining his squad leader Staff Sergeant Thomas Adams and fellow member Sergeant Lacey. The trio must move by helicopter because of the AAF lockdown. The Greenback Brass are due to visit and only specially vehicles are permitted freedom of movement. He gets in as the helicopter proceeds to make its way towards Camp Rogaine. On their way, the trio notice that there's a helicopter at Camp Maxwell. That is strange because the camp was decommissioned months prior to the actual drawdown. But they don't think any of it because there's a lot happened lately between the AAF and the NATO troops. On arrival, they check in with the commanding officer, who informs them that Colonel McKinnon required some logistical support at the Camino firing range. Adams and Carey take one of the Hammets and drive to Camino. The short drive to the base begins, but first they are stopped at the AAF checkpoint for an impromptu inspection. The duo notes how tense the AAF troopers seem to be while they perform the inspection.
Jesus, those greenbacks seem really on edge, huh?
No kidding. I better give Lacey the heads up.
They are cleared and get moving to Camino. On their way, they spot an overturned MRAP, the same one Colonel McKinnon just left with from Camp Rogaine. On closer inspection, it is revealed to be McKinnon, and Adams tries to revive the colonel, but McKinnon continues to show no sign of life. At the same moment, jets fly over their position and they witness explosions and gunfire at Camino. A lot of confused radio communications confirm that all NATO forces on the island are being attacked by the AAF in a green on blue attack. Not knowing what happened and what is going on, they flee into the forest on their way to reach Camp Rogaine. But immediately they get in a firefight with the AAF. Carey and Adams soon reach the outskirts of Rogaine, only to see it in ruins as the AAF raze it to the ground. They attempt to regroup at Point X-Way, but also discover that the AAF have already taken out the troops stationed there. Unsure what to do, a NATO helicopter flies past them and informs the duo to link up at LG Baldy for a hasty extraction. However, the helicopter is also shot down just as they barely reach halfway. The duo are forced to retreat into the woods again, much to Carey's dismay, in order to evade detection from the AAF.
We're out of options.
Soon after Carey and Adams enter the woods, Adams intercepts a radio call from Lacey, who we saw last in Camp Rogaine. He managed to survive the initial attack alongside another small group of survivors. Hoping to link up with them, Adams and Carey make their way towards their position. But before they even leave the forest, Adams steps on a landmine, which instantly kills him, leaving a shocked Carey to proceed alone towards the rendezvous point.
Jesus!
Sergeant Adams, we just heard an explosion. You guys okay? Over.
At the same time, Lacey suddenly receives a response from a British Special Force officer, identifying himself as Captain Scott Miller. He informs the survivors that his team has set up a temporary outpost at Camp Maxwell, and they're consolidating the remaining survivors of Task Force Aegis together to coordinate a counterattack against the AAF. After linking with Lacey's team, Carrie and the rest move through the forest yet again in order to meet up with Miller's team. Though they run up against several AAF squads along the way, they manage to reach the rendezvous point in one piece. A small team of Miller's men, led by a certain Lieutenant James, greets and leads them to the hidden camp at the long decommissioned Camp Maxwell. It is about 0830 when the team reach the camp and finally meet with Miller in person, who is revealed to be the leader of the highly secretive CGRG team. To their surprise, they find many other survivors also present at the camp, Sergeant Conway being one of them. As the only highest ranking NATO officer left on the island, Miller informs the survivors of the situation. He divides them into 4 squads. Alpha, Carrie's team, forms the main assault element, while Bravo, led by Lacey, is the recon squad. Charlie operates as a supporting unit that mostly consists of walking wounded, while Delta, consisting of Miller's CGRG team, performs reconnaissance deep inside AAF territory. Though still heavily outnumbered, the remnants of Task Force Aegis, spearheaded by Alpha, undertake a series of guerrilla operations aimed at dealing sharp blows against the AAF. At 0900 hours, they initially move out to deal with a NATO gunship that crashed near the camp during the early stages of the fighting. The team moves out and find the crash site already occupied by AAF soldiers. They fight them off, only to find out that the pilot couldn't be saved. The wreckage is secured from the AAF and successfully destroyed by Alpha. A half hour later, Carrie's squad got back to Maxwell. They immediately receive word that Bravo is pinned down in the village of Guerrilla. The team moves through the valley as the point man is taken out by an enemy patrol. They have to fight their way into the village to release Bravo. On arrival, the village is getting bombed by mortar fire. It is Carrie's job to take up the drone and find out where the spotters are, to take them out before they obliterate Alpha and Bravo. When the spotters are taken out, the teams are buzzed by an AAF jet and have to flee the area. When they're out, the village is bombed by the jet, and Alpha and Bravo retreat back to the camp together. Later that day, Alpha and Bravo stage a combined assault on the AAF-controlled Air Station Mike 26, with Charlie standing by with mortar and Delta providing auxiliary support. Carrie acts as the spotter for Charlie. As the mortar rounds land, the teams move in and deal with the AAF defenders and a motorized counterattack. Delta attempts to establish communications with the NATO Medcom in order to call in reinforcements. Their attempts ends in failure, however. With James being unable to raise any channels with Medcom, he decides to destroy the facility instead, in order to prevent the AAF from making use of it, in spite of the outrageous protest from Lacey. The station is completely demolished by James' team, and the 3 squads make their way back to Maxwell. Since Delta was doing some recon, Miller received intel that the AAF officer, simply known as Goblin, will soon arrive in Guerrilla. He appoints James to lead an amphibious assault, while Bravo sneaks into position from the hills opposite of their insert point. Because of some diving training Carrie had, he joins James on the assault. It is 1800 hours when they climb in their SVDs and sail to their insertion point. After a bit, they get out of the SVD and swim further. As they hit the beach, they are directly in a firefight with a small element of AAF soldiers. The beach is clear and they move to the town. Now with 2 teams around the town, they start the ambush and manage to assassinate the officer, but is identified to be a completely different person, with Goblin himself nowhere to be seen. They quick steal a truck and get back to base. Now, the remnants of Task Force Aegis have another problem. Having expended large amounts of their valuable equipment and ammunition on missions that have so far questionable results, the survivors are beginning to run critically low on vital supplies. Miller arranged a meeting with Nikos, a member of the FIA, an anti-AAF resistance group based on the Altian mainland. They agree to resupply the NATO forces by sharing a supply case stored at LZ Connor. Before they even move out, a loud explosion is heard as they see LZ Connor seemingly in flames.
Shit! We need to go! Now! Move!
Nikos panics and immediately drives off in his pickup truck to check on the case. Carrie's team attempts to catch up with Nikos, only to run into an AAF patrol. His vehicle is completely wrecked and the driver is slammed over dead, with Nikos himself nowhere to be seen. The squads proceed on foot to clear out the AAF troopers at the outpost. They only find the corpses of several FIA guerrillas with all their supplies burned to a crisp. Miller orders the squad to clear out a nearby village, hoping to at least inflict some damage against the AAF despite their enormous setback. Once the village is cleared, Maxwell itself suddenly comes under attack from an AAF artillery strike, with Miller telling Alpha and Bravo to not return. Unsure what to do, they proceed to head back regardless. Both squads return only to find it heavily damaged and in complete ruins. To their apparent luck, however, Miller informs the gathered survivors that during the attack he managed to raise contact with NATO Metcon. He also informs them that the task force must consolidate all of their remaining forces to secure the town of Aguirre Marina first, establishing a safe landing zone for the NATO reinforcements. What's left of Task Force Aegis split up in two main elements. Charlie and Delta launch diversionary attacks on Rogaine and behind enemy lines north of Aguirre Marina, while Alpha and Bravo assault the town itself. After linking up together on the outskirts of the firing range near Aguirre Marina, Alpha and Bravo begin the assault on the town. At the same time, Charlie and Delta successfully distract the AAF with their own attacks, forcing them to divide the bulk of their reinforcements away from the town. Divided up and stretched thin, the plan appears to work, with the AAF being forced into a full retreat on all fronts. Just as the battle is about to end, in a complete victory for the NATO forces, a flotile of CZ transport and attack helicopters are spotted making their way towards Stratis. The gunships open fire on the remnants of Task Force Aegis and completely annihilate Charlie in the process. The sudden CZ counter-offensive almost results in the death of all of the remaining survivors. With the battle's tide now fully swinging in favor of the AAF, Delta orders a last-minute retreat, having secured an escape route via boats just to the north of the town. The survivors are forced to desperately flee the valley north of the town, all the while fighting against paratroopers and mortar fire. They finally reach the boat and together with Delta successfully escape from Stratis with CZ on their heels. With their last plan in complete shambles, Carrie questions Miller on what he exactly has planned for them next. Along with the other survivors, Miller informs them that they intend to sail directly to the mainland of the country, Altis, and link up with the FIA resistance movement in order to continue their fight against the AAF. Though Carrie voices his doubts about the merits of Miller's plan, given their close call, he and the survivors have little choice but to accept and follow through with CGRG's plans. Suddenly, two AAF jets perform a flyby over the would-be escapees. Miller orders James to open fire on the jets, but it's already too late as they strafe past both boats, dropping their ordnance on them and capsizing the vessels. Knocked overboard from the blast, Carrie's vision blacks out and his consciousness fades away.